Je suis formel. Ce n'est pas un loup-garou.
Je suis bloqué! Pour l'attacher!
A mysterious werewolf board game is set up, and players are transported to the Middle Ages, a real werewolf town. They embody game characters, and they must identify all the werewolves to survive. As night falls, the entire town falls into slumber. The werewolves assign their roles, disappearing into the night, and those who refuse will turn into werewolves. Nowadays, monsters roam the village of Miller Valley, and it begins to hunt for prey.
Qu'est-ce qu'on avait dit pour le téléphone?
Pardon, papa.
Si vous voulez pas jouer, faut le dire.
In the film's scenes, Ho and his 3 generations were gathered around a table playing werewolf. Their family structure was a bit complicated. First, there was the senile grandfather, and then there was wife Mary, and Mary's son Theo, from her ex-husband, and also there was Clara, Ho's daughter from his ex-wife, and Lucy, their youngest daughter. It is clear that except for Ho, no one else was interested in the game. Clara was busy live-streaming to sell cosmetics. The grandfather was fussing about taking a nap, and the 2 children ran out to eat, so Ho could only put away the game box. Just as he closed the lid, the whole house began to tremble. The whole family thought it was an earthquake. Running to the basement for safety, they dared to leave the basement after the violent shaking stopped, but the scene before them had changed dramatically. Ho's family found themselves in the 15th century. The luxury apartment behind them had turned into a wooden cabin. When everyone felt confused, Ho realized that his eldest daughter Clara was missing. They had to follow the path to search for her, and they arrived at a nearby town soon. Mary stared at the scene before her. She thought it was a rural gathering. Lucy saw fried pancakes, and said she was hungry and wanted to eat. Mary took out her phone and asked if they could pay online. The vendor thought she was crazy, and outright refused to sell anything to them. Not long after, the 5 found a wanted poster on the wall. The criminal shared the same surname as the grandfather, Vassie. The old man wouldn't allow anyone to tarnish his surname, so he asked a passerby who the event planner was. The first passerby thought the grandfather was referring to the sheriff. He quickly replied that he was at the square where criminals were executed. So the group of 5 arrived at the square. The sheriff stood above and said he had caught a beast. The next moment, soldiers brought a man in a straw hat to the stage, and the sheriff asked him why he went outside at dark, and how he got blood on him. The man in the straw hat defended himself, saying he was just out looking for a lost sheep, and he had accidentally fallen and gotten blood on him. The sheriff asked the crowd below if this man was a beast, and what should be done with him. The crowd shouted, "Yes, execute him." The executioner, hearing this, subdued the straw hat man, and he raised his blade and chopped off his head. Blood splattered onto Ho's face. Ho thought it was fake blood, and even secretly licked it. Unexpectedly, the taste of blood filled his mouth instantly. Ho's expression changed, and then he hurriedly called for his family to leave. Once there was no one around, he explained that the blood was real, and the beheading scene wasn't a performance. The young man Theo was clever. He believed the family had traveled back to the Middle Ages. Unfortunately, Ho and the others didn't believe him. They called him a foolish child who had gone crazy from playing games. Just then, a knight appeared ahead. Ho approached to inquire if he had seen a mixed-race girl around 20 years old. Theo also chimed in to ask what year it was. The knight replied that the year was 1479, but Ho still wouldn't believe it. Just as he finished speaking, Mary's meeting alarm went off. The knight saw her take out a noisy box, and thought Mary was a witch, drawing his sword, ready to kill her. Unexpectedly, he was knocked away by the old man, and this senile grandfather, at some point, had gained a superpower. Ho tentatively asked many questions, and he found that his father's dementia had gone. Everyone was still trying to understand what was going on. Suddenly, the dishes in the wooden cabin began to fly around, and then, a bag of flour spilled onto the table. A line of text appeared on it. "I am Clara." It turned out that the eldest daughter hadn't gone missing at all. She was just in an invisible state, following them all the time. Theo grabbed a handful of flour and threw it into the air, and a human shape materialized.
Mais pourquoi ils m'entendent pas? Ils sont bouchés ou pas?
Ça y est, c'est bon, là on t'entend.
Oh, par contre là j'ai pas parlé, hein.
Clara was surprised to find that her dad could hear her thoughts. Suddenly, there was a knock outside. It was the sheriff who had discovered that they were outsiders, so he came to interrogate them about whether they were witches. Fortunately, Ho was a music teacher, and he lied and claimed to be a poet, saying he was passing through with a touring group. After saying this, Ho even performed a song. The sheriff believed him, warning them to hurry back inside, because the beast was coming. The sound of gongs rang out in the town when night fell, warning villagers to return home quickly. Ho's family began to search for food, and they happened to find the werewolf board game. Theo understood that they hadn't traveled through time, but had entered the game world. Grandfather's role was that of a hunter, which explained his strong strength. Clara was the little girl, cautious in her words and actions, and she had learned invisible. Ho could read minds, which made him the seer. As for the identities of the others, they would have to wait until their abilities manifested to make a judgment. Theo vaguely remembered that while playing the game, he had got the thief card. Unfortunately, they couldn't remember the specific rules written on the cards. They only remembered that to become the winner of the game, they must identify all the werewolves and kill them all. Lucy suddenly asked, "What if I'm a werewolf?" Mary thought her daughter was scared, so she hurried over to comfort her. Clara was thirsty at night and couldn't help but get up. She draped a cloak over herself and went outside to get some water. Clara saw 3 werewolves emerging from the thick fog. She quickly hid behind a pillar, extinguishing the candle, and then Clara ran back inside to inform her father that the werewolves had come. Mary immediately went to wake her daughter, but she found that Lucy was not in her bed. The girl knocked on the door and was let in by Ho, and the next time, she said she had just gone to the bathroom, but everyone was hesitant to easily trust Lucy. Grandfather stepped forward to identify her and assured them that Lucy was not a werewolf. A wolf howl rang out, and Lucy transformed on the spot. She lost her sanity and lunged at her family. Fortunately, Grandfather was incredibly strong, and he quickly tied Lucy up. The next day, the girl returned to normal. The urgent task was to find a way back home. Mary thought that the game and the cabin were both from Ho's ancestors. According to the wanted poster, their ancestor might have been imprisoned. They could visit him in prison to ask him how to go home. After deciding this, they took the family into town together. Mary assigned the kids to find food, while she and her husband figured out how to enter the prison, and the 4 agreed to meet back in an hour. Theo had been thinking about his identity as the thief, so he was curious about the abilities of the thief. Theo planned to steal something, but he was caught by the blacksmith when he acted. Theo turned to run, seeing the bad situation, and the blacksmith chased, following him relentlessly. At the meantime, Ho and his wife were stopped by a guard, and they sat on the street corner, feeling down. Clara ran here suddenly, gesturing to explain that Theo had been caught stealing. Just as she finished speaking, the blacksmith came to hold them accountable. He said, "Your son was caught stealing by me. I'm going to hang him." Mary grabbed the blacksmith by the collar upon hearing this, and he instantly became Theo's appearance. He hadn't been caught by the blacksmith at all. Theo discovered that his skill was the identity theft. Once a thief stole an item, he could take on the appearance of the item's owner and possess their abilities. Theo used his ability to disguise himself as a guard, and then he led Mary into the prison. They successfully found Ho's ancestor, but he didn't know the origins of the game. The board had been given to him 3 days ago by a werewolf. Since then, cannibalistic beasts had appeared in the town, and the werewolf had long since disappeared. Ho's family could only win the game, since the ancestor had no other solutions. From the board's perspective, there should be 4 werewolves. They couldn't kill Lucy, so they planned to first found the other 3 to kill. Just then, Grandfather noticed someone eavesdropping. He casually threw a plate, knocking the person out. The eavesdropper was Piero. He was Ho's ancestor's neighbor, and an inventive artist, because soon the ancestor Rick would be sentenced to burning at the stake, so Piero wanted to take away the useful things in the room. Ho used his mind-reading ability to confirm that he was not lying, and he untied the ropes on Piero. The eager Piero learned that Clara had been forced to become invisible. He offered to help her create skin. It was that Piero had brought back a special material from America, which we know as rubber. He had Clara jump into a rubber pool to take shape, and then Piero made a rubber suit for her.
Secoue la tête, secoue, bouge.
He also provided Clara with a voice necklace. The rubber skin could be removed at any time. At the same time, the sheriff had caught a new werewolf suspect. The straw hat man from last time had been a mistaken capture. This time, he had caught a girl.
Tout le monde connaît ton étrangeté. Tu es encore célibataire.
À 17 ans.
The sheriff had been executing 1 villager each day, but none of them were werewolves. This suspect was only 17 years old. and the executioner was reluctant to act. The sun was about to set when he hesitated. The sheriff had no choice but to draw his sword and take action in person. Unexpectedly, a wolf howl echoed. The girl suddenly broke free from her chains and became a werewolf. The sheriff hadn't made a mistake this time. The villagers saw the werewolf appear and instantly panicked. Everyone ran around like headless chickens as the werewolf was about to charge at the children. Grandfather quickly ran to help. At that critical moment, the sheriff shot an arrow at the werewolf. She reverted back to her human shape. She was still holding the werewolf card. Grandfather picked up the card and quickly left. Lucy suddenly took off her earplugs. She also transformed at the moment she heard the wolf howl, and she rushed into the crowd and disappeared. Everyone hurriedly began searching for her. Unexpectedly, the sheriff discovered the wolf cub, Lucy. He immediately brought his men to capture her. Fortunately, Grandfather first used a sack to capture Lucy. They finally managed to find Lucy, but Clara was missing again. Ho hurried to look for his eldest daughter. Unexpectedly, he encountered two werewolves. The next moment, Clara pulled him into the shadows. She told her father to hide safely, and she would go to lure the werewolf away. After Clara spoke, she removed the rubber suit. She deliberately ran ahead to make noise and divert the werewolf's attention. The werewolf was indeed unfortunate. He took 2 steps forward and accidentally stepped into a trap. A soldier rushed out to capture him, but was knocked down by a figure in black behind him. He released the trap and saved the werewolf. Watching as the werewolf took the soldier away, it seemed there were traitors in the town. At that moment, they recovered a werewolf card, and Clara discovered that, even in their transformed state, they remained some human characteristics. While being invisible last night, she had observed that the 2 werewolves should be a male and a female. The female werewolf had white claws, indicating she was quite old, and the male werewolf had a big belly and a limp. Ho's family began a thorough search of the town with the 2 distinct features. Grandfather and Lucy found the male werewolf soon. He was a drunken man with a limp. Lucy caught the scent of her kind, and Grandfather used his hunting abilities to capture him. Things were going very smoothly, but Mary encountered trouble. She encountered a peasant woman covered in blood. Assuming she was a werewolf, the peasant woman explained that her husband had beaten her, which was why her clothes were stained with blood. In the Middle Ages, domestic violence against women was common. The peasant woman saw no issue with it, but Mary, a lawyer from the 21st century, could not bear such illegal behavior. She dragged the peasant woman to confront the abusive man. However, there were no protective laws in the Middle Ages. Hence Mary was surrounded by several men soon. As the saying goes, when things look bad, one should stop acting. As Mary was about to leave her phone number, she forgot that there were no mobile phones in the Middle Ages, and ordinary women were not expected to read or write. She completely regarded as a witch by the locals.
Sorcière! Non, non, on se détend, hein, nous faites pas un burn-out.
Burn-out?
Oui, c'est de l'anglais.
So, Mary was imprisoned because of these. The next day, she was to be burned at the stake with Rick. Mary told her husband to take the family away first, but Ho would not give up his wife. The following day, the prisoner was brought to the square. Mary took the opportunity to rally for women's rights before her death. She told all the women in the crowd, nowadays, women who can read will be viewed as witches and executed. But in the future, you can become scientists, lawyers, astronauts. The future is yours. The sheriff ordered them to gag her upon hearing this. As the torches were about to ignite the wood, Ho quickly took out his instrument and began to play and sing. Drawing everyone's attention, Clara seized the opportunity to untie her mother and Rick's ropes. The 2 jumped into Theo's cart to escape, and Ho rode following them. The sheriff immediately ordered his men to loose arrows. Poor Rick was hit again.
Okay.
In the end, the family safely escaped to the outskirts. Piero suggested they could hide in the church. He had dug a tunnel there. They could enter by inputting the code 316. By late at night, they finally arrived at the church. They raised their torches to look for the tunnel. After entering the code, the tunnel did not open. But suddenly, a werewolf appeared. She was the leader of the female werewolves. Theo, Grandfather, and Clara were the 3 strongest, so they were responsible for holding off the werewolf. Lucy was watching cartoons with her headphones on. She was not affected by the werewolf's presence, and did not become one of them. However, Theo and the others were no match for the werewolf. Soon they lost their advantage, and were unable to cope. At this critical time, the sheriff suddenly appeared with a bow and some arrows. Ho urged him to quickly shoot the werewolf, but the sheriff stood beside the female werewolf. The fact was that he was the mysterious figure in black, and this werewolf was the sheriff's wife, Anna. Anna was a baker, whose hands covered with flour, and that was why her claws had white fur. Now, Ho's family was in dilemma. They were all about to die at the werewolf's hands. Lucy's tablet suddenly ran out of battery. She couldn't help but transform upon hearing the wolf howl. Lucy bared her fangs and approached her parents. But Mary was not deterred by her daughter's shape. She softly hummed the nursery rhyme her daughter favored most. She wanted to bring her daughter's mind back. Unexpectedly, this strategy actually worked. Lucy turned to confront Anna and the sheriff. She was ready for battle with strong and agile. Lucy unsheathed her claws and attacked the female werewolf from behind. The effect was like using a grater rushing on the back. Ho and the others thought they had won. They cheered loudly for their daughter. However, Lucy was distracted and was grabbed by Anna. Anna threw the little wolf cub against the wall, killing it. Lucy became back into her human shape. She was still holding the werewolf card. Just as the family was in mourning, Anna quietly approached, intending to launch a sneak attack. Unexpectedly, Mary suddenly awakened her superpower. It turned out the identity card she had touched was Witch. Mary used her magic to kill Anna. Next, she used a potion to revive her daughter. Clara and Theo also returned to their original state. The sheriff held the Cupid card in his hand. His role was to protect the partner who had transformed into a werewolf. Now Ho had won the game. He was ready to return to the 21st century. Before leaving, he made sure to say goodbye to Piero. Ho unexpectedly learned Piero's true name, Leonardo Piero da Vinci.
Tu achètes tout ce qu'il peint. Tu plaisantes? Il peint des bouses. Tu achètes tout, je te dis.
Finally, the cards returned to their places, and they returned home. This adventure brought the family closer together. I wonder if everyone recognized that the grandfather with dementia was the main character from Lyon, the professional, the famous French actor Jean Reno. Overall, it can be considered a charming children's film. In the first 5 minutes, I thought it was the French version of Jumanji. The pacing was smooth, and the jokes were dense. However, the content felt like a children's book. The premise was good, but the execution was rather mediocre. It's suitable for watching with young children. If you enjoy my channel, please click to subscribe.